Was poppin', was poppin', was poppin'. Welcome, Nicky and Moose. I'm Nicky. That's Moose. What up, Moose?
What up, y'all?
And this is a very special episode. Behind every great brand, behind every great business, there is someone who's working hard behind the scenes, not only making sure certain things are in place, but the revenue's coming in. The systems are in place. And I'm talking about revenue. It's talking about like 2 million in 1 year. Everybody needs this particular person. And why I say it's special, because you may know this person. You may have heard this person every single week, but you don't really know who he is. You don't know the backstory. You don't know where he's at right now, and you don't know what the future holds. Moose, who are we talking about?
Man, I couldn't keep a straight face throughout the intro, but we talking about the one and only, just so I can keep it consistent. We talking about me, y'all. We talking about me tonight. Yeah. Wow.
I wanted to do something different, but let's get into this intro.
2 kids from Queens, cut from a different cloth. Now joining forces, helping you to elevate your personal brand. Yeah, I'm talking about Nicky and Moose, bringing you a never-before-seen perspective into the mindset, the mentality, the behaviors, the driving force, but more importantly, the stories behind the people and brands that you know and love the most.
And you know, before we get into this amazing episode, this is powered by Ecamm Live, the #1 all-in-one streaming platform that allows you to stream not only to Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, all the social media platforms all at once, but allows you to also do pre-recorded videos for your courses, for your content on social media, allows you to do text transitions, everything that you may need, video isolations, audio isolations. It is everything you need for podcasting, content, you name it, it could do. And we're giving 14 days for free on us if you go to www.nickyandmoose.com/ecamm. That's ECAMM. And they actually added a new feature with AI that allows you to come up with new titles. When you're stuck on titles, you hit a little button and AI allows you to come up with some of the best titles for your content. Go to nickyandmoose.com/ecamm to get your 14-day trial.
So fire.
Moose, how we feeling?
Man, I am feeling a little nervous. Nervous, you know?
All right. Nervous.
It's a different kind of episode. I get to take that. I get to take the hot seat on this one. But no, I'm excited, man. I'm excited. I feel good. Things are great. Halfway through, a little more than halfway through the month of Ramadan at the time that we're recording this. At the time that you'll listen to it will be probably in the last 10 days or so. So believe it or not, man, time is this one is going pretty fast, you know. So yeah,
I feel like it has, because I think I only asked about it twice and you're like, oh, we're already done. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. And the period of the fast is also a little shorter. So, and shorter by me, like the number of hours that we're fasting. So typically, we break fast at like 8:30. So I don't look as maybe depleted this year, at least so I like to think. Because we break it fast like 7:30, 7. Okay. When the beginning of the month, it was like 7:10, I think it was. So we're at the 7:30 mark now, which is it's not bad. You get to build your tolerance, and as you go on. So we maintain it. We maintain it.
Okay, yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. And the only time I'm probably going to talk about me is right now. I'm good, people. I did a thing on social media. I put out to the universe that I wanted a dog. Yes.
You put this on social?
I did. A specific dog at that. A French bulldog. Okay. I wanted a French bulldog. I put it out in the universe. And the thing about me, everything I say somehow comes to life. And so I knew if I put it out there, it would happen for those who don't, for our day ones and who may have noticed or whatever. Spazzy, my dog, passed last year. So it's like trying to figure out, okay, do I need a dog? Do I not? And then I realized I haven't ever not been without a dog. So with with me being transparent on one of our lives about where my state of mind was, somebody suggested like, yo, I think you may need a dog. I said,
Wow.
You may be right. But, I want a specific dog if I'm going to get a dog now. And so there may be some things in the works. So we'll see. But I will say this. If I do get a dog, one, it is going to be super branded out. I just want to let you know. It's going to be a brand. We're going to have a new co-host. I'm just letting you know. I mean, content strategy. Already know the colors, right? Already know the brand colors. Have a tagline, everything.
Hey, some dog pages do better than some people pages. I ain't even gonna lie. So
listen,
I see it.
Listen, I said it's going to be a new co-host. We're going to get doggy sponsorships. I don't care.
I like it.
Care.
I like
it. I don't care. So
I like it.
But if anybody happens, and mind you, what I put out on social media was I do not want to pay my unborn child for this Frenchie. Because, I looked at the prices. Yeah.
A friend of the family just dropped a couple Ks on.
Yes.
Literally like yesterday. That's funny.
No, you're saying couple, like that's two.
Oh, no, like a couple of couples. So they dropped like 4. Yeah, they dropped 4.
There's more.
Wow.
There's So
10? Like 10 more?
So there's their start from some of them. The one I'm specifically looking at, 7 to 10. It can be higher depending on who breeds them and everything like that. So I'm learning a lot. But this is not like I said, this is the only time I'm talking about me. You know what I mean?
Couple vacations right there is what that was. Yeah. Okay. No, that's
why I said I do not want to pay.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it.
Let's get the connects right, man. Let's get the connects right for Nicks.
Listen,
I think it's only right.
If I added any kind of value,
and
you just happen to know a really cute Frenchie, pass that over. You know what I mean? Pass that over. Please and thank you. But let's get into this episode. So here's the thing, right? And this was of my calling. And I kind of been like bugging Moose a little. I think I said this maybe twice before, right? I was like, we should interview you. He's like, because we all know Moose is very private, right? And shout out to our after show people. You know a little bit more about Moose, but we never on this podcast really spoke about his journey, about who he is. We hear bits and pieces if you really pay attention, if you put the pieces together. But he's a really dope individual with a really dope story that I just wanted to collect in like about an hour of like who Moose is. Because sometimes I don't even know. I'm like, man, what's he do again? I always say that. I was like, I know I need you, but I don't even know what you do. But you're very important. So let's talk about it, right? So let's just start from the beginning. And if you agree, by the way, if you agree, we don't know who Moose is, like comment on it. Like, yeah, thank you. Finally, we've been waiting for this episode. Okay. So let's start off with this. You were born. No, let's not. When you were 5. April? No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, let's start with the obvious of New Yorker, immigrant a huge like passion for, I'll let you fill in, but there's so much to that than just the typical. I'm a New Yorker, came in as an immigrant with the family. 9/11 happened, but I feel like there's more to that. So I really wanted you to share some of the ups, the downs, the challenges of some of what makes who you are.
Yeah, I always think back to three things that really shaped me to be who I am today, and a lot of it had to do with my dad. So when I first met my dad, so I had met my dad as a child. I think he was at my first birthday party. He used to travel a lot to Kuwait when we lived in Egypt, and so but the first time that I recall, like vividly, meeting my dad was when I was 7 years old. And I remember him like coming into the house. He came from Kuwait, and I'm looking at like this giant figure who everyone talked so highly about to be my dad. And it was like, yo, that's crazy. I'm meeting my dad for the first time, at least so that I recall. And it was that trip when he came home that he also broke the news that we were going to be moving to America. So it's like, I just met you. All right, we leaving everything to come to the States. Now, at that time, you're like, no, but this doesn't make sense because you're taking us away from our family, our friends, everything that we know to go to a place that is super foreign to us. So when I come here, it's not the America that everyone talked about back home because people treat you different because you look different, you don't speak the language, right? So there were all of those barriers that I think I can't think of who I am today without thinking about that experience and having to come to the country and have to almost reinvent myself to start learning a completely new culture and navigate the world through that lens. So that's when it started for me for sure.
Okay, so break something down because you're like, you met your dad. So your dad wasn't like when you were born. Well, what age did you meet him?
I was 7.
Oh.
I was 7, yeah.
So he was just working the whole time?
Yeah, most of the time he was working. So I think he came, if I remember correctly, my mom said he came to my first birthday party. Mm-hmm. So when I was 1 year old, there's a picture of him holding me when I was 1. But again, like 1 year old, you don't remember like, oh yeah, that's my dad. You don't remember nothing. So the first vivid memory that I have of him, and I'm sure he probably seen me scattered through that time period, but the first time that I met him that I recall, like I can literally close my eyes and think of that exact image, was 7 years old at my grandma's house in Egypt. He walks in and it was like, yo, that's your dad. It's like, whoa. And so that was a surreal moment for me. But just the transition of leaving that life to come here, that's a big, I got to put that as a big like checkpoint of, oh, okay, yeah, who you see today has a lot to do with that person. So like when I think of why I'm empathetic towards people and why I have compassion for what someone may be experiencing and why sometimes, although as an introvert, a typical introvert may not necessarily be as in tune, maybe not all introverts, as in tune with people's emotions, I think that migration is what kind of gave me that feel, right? Because I think back to my struggles of, being bullied, being made fun of, being uncomfortable because of the language barrier and the culture shock, everything all together, that I look at people and I can sense the hurt and the things that they're not saying, but feeling because of that moment for me. So I think, my two passions are really people and business. So it's like those two together, I mean, with the exception of baseball, but those two things. But when I can't tell you that, my passion for the flight assessment and people and all those things isn't attached to that moment. Right. It's like coming through that experience and then having to navigate the world. And then you mentioned it, of course, 9/11. So basically for me, I was in 5th grade at the time. And it was like the second week of school. And I went to school in Queens. And literally from our school windows, you could see that entire city skyline, all of the buildings, including Twin Towers at the time, Empire State Building, Chrysler Building, all of the buildings. And so one of my friends was sitting in class and brought to our teacher's attention that there was smoke coming out of the Twin Towers. And it was like, oh, that's kind of weird. I didn't even know what the name of the building was. That just let you know how new I was still to the country. Although right. I had learned the language at that point. But yeah, my life changed instantly that day because the narrative of what started to display throughout the world and on the news was about people of my background, my heritage that just committed this terror and this terrible act. And so the connection is when you hear the name Mostafa and someone who's Muslim, you immediately tie it to 9/11. Mm-hmm. So that was like a big identity crisis too, because you grow up living this double life like, wait, but that's not what I'm taught at home. Like, no, they don't tell us to do this stuff. This don't make sense. Right. But you're going through a world where all the movies you're watching, it's people of your culture, your background, your language that are the bad guys, or, it's crazy. And so that was another pivotal point because when I think I was 27 when I first looked up the meaning of my name, and it was the chosen one. Mm. So when you're not careful, you're given this message or this narrative around who you're supposed to be, but it can be completely different from who you actually are. So it took a while. It took, you're talking about almost some 20 years in the making or something like that before I actually started to see, oh, okay, hold on a second. Yeah, no, that's I got to redo this whole thing over. Now it makes sense why I was having some of the challenges. So like you bring all of these experiences together around immigrant, not from this country, 9/11, from New York City, coming from where I come from and what I believe, and having to navigate the world with all of these different narratives and things around me. That makes up a lot of who I am, like why I move and believe the things I believe.
Okay, so connect something for me. So you even like, and we'll get into the flight assessment later with how your passion for people, but in the beginning, like coming into America and then with the whole 9/11, there was a lot of bullying and misunderstanding of who you are. So at what point did that change to where, or did it not phase you to where you're just like, I love people. Hello. I see it more deeper than that. Or was there a specific thing that happened that was like, oh, you know what? I get it now. Like this is not what I experienced. This is what I want to know more of.
Yeah, no, baseball was my coping mechanism. So like my passion for the Yankees and baseball is like deeply rooted because for those who were in New York at the time of 9/11, if you remember after the attacks of September 11, the only thing that played on TV for a week straight, it was the news, it was updates on what was happening, it was replay of the video and the plane crashing into the towers. But the first public event that was aired back on TV was a Yankee game. Mm-hmm. So that was the very first thing that the news went away, and it was like we're going back to real life, and it was a Yankee game, and it was like, oh, right. It was literally a baseball game that went back. I don't know if it was the Yankees or the Mets, but for sure it was baseball, right. And that was a big part for the city to almost start healing and coming back. Yeah. And so that was right around the time that I started playing baseball. And that was the one part or the one place that there was no discrimination. Like when it came to baseball, it was you put in the work, you get a fair shot at playing because you beat out the person next to you or whoever it was, and you get your opportunity, and that's it. It didn't matter what your name was. It didn't matter what your skin complexion was. It didn't matter what you believed in. It didn't matter where your parents were from. Mm-hmm. It was simple. Can you put in the work, or are you willing to put in the work? And can you beat out the person next to you for the starting opportunity? So that was the coping mechanism of, okay, I know this is still happening in the world, or this is what life is like outside of these lines, but within these lines, that started to give me a lot more discipline and understanding for the American culture, believe it or not, because I was now surrounded by a lot of different people from all parts of the world because of baseball. So this is where I got the Queens experience, where I had a ton of friends that were from Dominican Republic. I had a ton, like friends from all over the world who played baseball, primarily from Latin America. And that's what like started the re-entry into, oh, Queens is the most diverse nation in the world. And so you can actually neutralize what people say about you by simply embracing it and educating them on the truth. So there was this whole period of, oh my God, I don't want to tell people my name or what I believe because they're automatically going to associate it with what happened on 9/11 or make fun of me for that. But then when I started to see how I can work my relationships, I realized that I wasn't educated enough on the history of Egypt and what I actually believed. So when someone would say something to me, I had no comeback for it about, well, it's like, okay, so you're saying you're not associated with 9/11 or that's not what you believe. So, but what do you believe? And because I came so early, I never had a comeback to explain, oh, well, let me tell you, this is a group of extremists who actually are not Muslim at all, but they do that with the name. Right? So once I went back home once I think it was the year 2000, because I came to the States in 97. I went back home once. That was my last time. I haven't been back since. In 2000, I went back to Egypt, and I remember my uncle there taking me to the museums and like teaching me about the heritage and the history. And he's like, so that way when people ask you, you at least have some level of knowledge to tell them about what it is. And so, that helped a lot too, actually knowing what to say to help reframe people's perspective and help me to cope a little bit.
Love that. So in this time of like transition of coming from home now to America, that shift from bully to now liking people, what were some of the values and beliefs that actually also helped you cope, that you learned from home, like from mom, dad, like that made it just a little bit easier so when you went out to the real world?
Yeah. I think the work ethic for sure came from my dad. I always joke and say that my father owned the business, and that was really my first introduction to business. It was through my dad because my uncle owned the bread route, and then my dad got into the business. And so for anyone who's affiliated with, just bread routes or distributors in general, as it relates to those big products like that, bread, what would they call it? Produce, different products like that you just see on the shelves of your supermarket. It's everyday people who get up super early in the morning to take those products from a company warehouse to the shelves of the supermarket. And so we did that, but primarily for a bread company. And that was my introduction to business. But our day started at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning. And I was working from the minute I was 7 or 8 years old. So it only progressed until, 15 when my father passed. And a year or so later, we actually cut ties with the bread route so that I can stay in school and finish playing baseball as well.
Right.
But that work ethic of, okay, you want to play baseball, but you know what funds your baseball activities? Work. So let's go to work first. So I would get up at Saturday mornings, go work the bread route from 4 a.m. to 11 or 12, and then go to my game. And I remember times like us getting into, I don't want to call them fights. They were more so disagreements because I really had no say. But it was like, come on, like, please let me go to the game. I have an early game today. It's like, if you want to get to the game early, let's go to work. Let's move very fast. And let's make sure we get to your game on time. So it was always that where, and you always, when something like that happens as at a young age, you're upset at whoever's teaching you that lesson because you don't see the bigger picture of like, why are you being like that? Just let me go to the game.
Yeah.
But after he passed, it all made sense. It's like, it was crazy because in a sense, it was like he knew that this was going to happen. As an only child, or I was an only child, he would pass on and I would have no siblings or anyone to really fall back on. And I had to figure it out on my own. But it's like I almost didn't miss a beat because he passed suddenly. Massive heart attack one night, and he passed on, unfortunately. So there wasn't no preparation in terms of like, heads up, this is what's going to happen. But as soon as that happened, I mean, he passed on a Friday. Monday, I was back at work. So it was like, you gotta hire a driver and train him on the business. You have a week off from school so that by the time you go back to school, the driver can now continue the route and life goes on. So if he doesn't take me through that training period from 7 to 15, there's no telling that I would have been able to hold it down for our family, at least when that happened. So that was a pivotal moment. So I think of, the work ethic, the solution-oriented mindset of, hey, problems are going to happen, but don't dwell on the problems. Just think about the solution. That definitely comes from my dad, and that environment. My mom, just her heart. I think my mom has one of the biggest hearts in the world. She's such a loving person, so caring, and she'll sacrifice herself to make sure you're good. So I think that passion for people comes from her. So it's like the work ethic and the business stuff from my dad, and then the people part and the people skills in general, or just how to treat and think about people and relationships, that comes from my mom. So I think those are two pieces that come from them. And then of course, I got to give credit to my aunt, because my aunt has helped me to really understand my faith too. So, she's made a ton of sacrifices. I'm giving y'all all the deets on here today, but yeah, she made a ton of sacrifice. So I would say my faith and the understanding of, what my faith is and what it means, and to translate and actually formulate my own relationship, my aunt played a big role in that.
So with the passing of your father, like how, because you said you went right back to work on Monday.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. I'm not even going to ask how does that process. What I'm going to ask is, how does that influence your goals and drive as a kid? Like maybe the day before you weren't even thinking about certain things, and then when that happened, there was a certain kick to like, oh snap, I got to do this, I got to do that. Like, how did the passing of your father influence everything that happened afterwards?
Yeah, it made me grow up so much faster, where the average freshman in high school is thinking about maybe how they look and what they're going to wear and how they're going to impress so-and-so. I had a completely different set of responsibilities and things that I needed to think about because of the circumstance, not because I was a special kid who just didn't think about those things. I absolutely thought about those things and even had to, manage that in the midst of, but the reality of my circumstance was so different that I had to think deeper into the future around, okay, what am I going to do for college? What are we going to do with the business? How are we going to continue to survive? Do I keep playing baseball? Do I leave school? Like, do I drop out of school? That was a conversation at one point too. Mm-hmm. And so there were all of these things that came together, and it just went back to what was the value and the vision that we came to this country for. That was like the deciding factor. And when I thought back on that and talked to people who I cared about or respected, and the value and the vision was, we're coming here to make the sacrifice so that you can get a better education and do better than what your parents had. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, oh, so you have to leave the business to stay in school, not leave school to stay with the business. Mm-hmm. So that was something even my uncle and I disagreed on. My uncle was like, yo, you might need to leave school, stop playing baseball. Like, you're not a kid anymore. Granted, I was 15, but from where his mentality is like, yo, you're 15, you're a grown man at this point. You need to go take care of this business. But then my mom, and like I said, like our internal conversations around what my dad wanted, it's like, oh, what would he have preferred me to do? It's like, oh no, he would have wanted you to stay in school and complete your education to be the first one to graduate with a college degree. Like, that's what he came here for. Mm-hmm. So it was like, okay, let me fulfill that by leaving the business and staying with the bread route. Okay. Excuse me, leaving the bread route to stay with school and baseball.
Okay. So was there like a age that was a super milestone that was like, yeah, this business thing, this is for me. Like,
yeah,
we've tried all these different things, but this particular thing right here, I want to do something around this, right? Like, was there a specific age or a specific job that that triggered that?
Yeah, I was in college. It was 2011, and a group of my friends were starting to do business overseas from New York. They weren't traveling overseas. They had, relationships and built relationships with suppliers in China, and they were manufacturing products there, and they were selling them on Amazon. And so that reignited the business kick, because I saw them build a brand from scratch and buy an office and get warehouse and start figuring out all these things on the fly. I was like, oh shoot, wait a second. I have some business experience too.
All right.
And so it got me back involved in that kick and starting to think about, okay, what do I do in addition to baseball? Or what do I do just after baseball in general when college is done and over with? And so the first real time that I really remember going back into it and then starting to make the connection, because it's crazy when you're navigating, again, your life for like difficult times, you don't see the fullness of what you're doing. So when I was going through what I was going through after the passing of my dad, I didn't think about, oh, I have business experience and I managed a business and I did this and I did that, because it's just what I needed to do to survive. It was a survival mechanism in a sense. So you forget about that. You sweep it under the rug as that's ordinary experience. Everyone does that. Like, who wouldn't have done that? And so it takes some reflecting to go back and say, wait a second, this is not your first time down the rodeo. You have business experience already. It's the same thing. The environment may shift. So like for somebody listening right now, you might be saying, oh, no, I could never be an entrepreneur. I could never own my brand, or I could never do this, because you feel that in your mind, this is the very first time you're about to step out into the real world and take on this responsibility or put yourself out there. But I bet if you sat down and just took inventory of your life experiences, you would find other moments where you did the very same thing that it would take for you to start and put yourself out there and do those things now. So it's not your first time. You just have to make the connection the proper way. And so when I started to make the connection and date back to that, it gave me just a little bit more confidence to say, oh, I can do this. I just need to learn the infrastructure and the ecosystem in a new environment, because I did it in the bread industry. Maybe that's not so sexy. Right. With me trying to use the web and build relationships with manufacturers overseas and in China, and the language barrier and all those things. But that, my friends gave me that spark. And then I ended up, and that's actually what sparked my relationship with E to some extent, because I met him right around that time in 2011. And then I sent him a business proposal to design these custom phone cases for him. So it was the first, like back at that time, there wasn't drop shipping, and there wasn't all of these different things that are available today, where you could simply upload an image and have it slapped on, hoodies and shirts and whatever, all these different products. And you're like, okay, bet, let's go. Right. For you to do that in 2011, that time period, you needed suppliers, you needed manufacturers, you needed design, like you needed a whole ecosystem just to make that happen. So I remember working on a business proposal with my good friend Marvin, and I sent it over to, I think it was CJ first, then E, then like it passed through pretty much everyone's hands before they came back and said, hey, let's do this for Black Friday. Right. And we designed about, I think, 3 or 4 different case styles that went out. So that was the first time since my business experience that I had carried a project or a business start to finish, and then got that business kick again, like, okay, this is the most money I've ever made, like seeing it one time from my efforts here. That doesn't hurt either, because I lived off of that for like 6 months. I think it was like a short little something that wouldn't really go far today, but I lived off of that for a minute. It made me feel rich for a long time. But after baseball, it was like, you start piggybacking off of those experiences for sure.
So, okay, so stay right there, because you mentioned E, aka Eric Thomas, aka E.T. the hip hop preacher, person who's been on the podcast about twice now. Let's talk about, how did you go from selling phone cases to a whole partnership, building extreme execution. You literally the right hand of this whole flight assessment that we know of and the new language that we have to not only for self-awareness, but as well as, team communication and that whole nine. Like how did we get there?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, I was a fan. Like, I started off as a super fan. I was reading Think and Grow Rich at the time that I came across E's book. And for anyone who's read the book recently, you know that there's a story in the beginning of the book, maybe in the first 2 chapters, where someone who had no money, lived far away, wanted to work desperately with Thomas Edison. And he ended up just showing up, and they, story goes on to say that they went on to do like hundreds of inventions together because this guy was willing to do what the people who were around Thomas Edison already weren't willing to do. And so he got more opportunities just as a result of his desire and willingness. So I remember reading that and listening to E's videos every Monday. At the time, it was just TGIM. And I was like, you know what? Rather than me try, I had to make the connection somehow. So I said, rather than me try to impress this guy with what I imagine everyone else is saying. So I'm sure everyone's reaching out like, I love the videos, man. I work mad hard. I want an opportunity or, stuff like that. And so I said, let me do something different. I'm still playing baseball. I'm a freshman in college at this time. I said, I'm going to reach out and tell him about what I got going on and prove to him that I am all the things that people say they are. Hard worker, dedicated, disciplined, loyal, yada, 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 just through the consistency of my efforts. Mm-hmm. And so I found him on Facebook. I sent the message. And my expectation was I'm going to have to send a message every day. That's what I was prepared to do. I'm going to have to send a message every day so that I can get his attention and start introducing myself. I send the message the first day. He responds immediately and says something along the lines of, I like what you got going on. Let's keep in touch. There's like, here you go, prepared to do something every single day. And then from the very first or second try, you get a positive response, and it just reinforces the mentality of what I was trying to do. So that's how the relationship started. But I ended up meeting him for the first time officially, him and CJ, at an event in New York. And then the following week, I followed him into a church in New Jersey. And in a strange but weird way, it made me more of a Muslim because of his passion in just transparency and the way he spoke about God in a Christian setting. It was the weirdest thing ever, but I heard someone talking about God for the first time that I related to and understood. And so I just connected what he said about God to the person who I knew was God. And for me, that was, my faith. And so then that ignited that. And then literally later that summer, I got my scholarship to play baseball up in Michigan. And we connected, while in Michigan. I brought him to speak at my school and just kept in touch. And then fast forward, that was 2012, fast forward to 2017, right after Game Changers and some of the stuff that was going on there. That kind of opened up the doorway for, extreme execution and what happened there. Of course, I got to give credit to Chris Daniels, may he rest in peace. He was the one who introduced us to the assessment originally. But after his passing, it was Preach and I who stepped up to the realm to really kind of take control of everything that was happening as it relates to the assessment. And we ran with it. And he just was like, oh, you guys are getting certified? I'm going to get certified. And then we just started bouncing off of each other and fixing some of the things that he had going on in his business. And it was an organic connection around, let's do something together with this here. Let's build a certification program. Let's keep the trainings alive. Let's do this. And then that relationship just has grown into what it is now where, I think going on 5 or 6 years, just from a business standpoint, to put the amount of money that we put into that tool and him to really trust me, because I got to admit, he put up the money, I did all the work, but for somebody to trust you with that amount of money and, that much writing on it is definitely something huge. So that's the brief story, abbreviated story of E and the business there.
So I actually got a side question and I'm gonna go back to what I really need to ask. So from a collaboration standpoint, right? you're an only child.
Mhm.
To focus so much on such a big collab, how did like how does that make you feel? Like, is it like, yeah, this makes sense because I'm an only child, or uh it took these particular collabs to go wrong or right for me to understand the importance of it, or I had to go through certain things by myself for me to understand it's okay to be a number two. It's okay to be, behind the scenes. Like
Yeah.
I wanted to always know that.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever made the connection because of me being an only child, because I've always had something going on where I played the number one. So
Mhm.
at the time that we built Extreme Execution, I started and ran the Dream Supply, which was my business in the hospitality industry, and that was completely on my own.
Right.
And so I was doing those simultaneously. So yes, you could call it playing a number two here or even a number three, but I was number one on this side
Right.
for
Right.
what I was doing. And so you still get that kick out of it. So I think, and it's a combination of coming from a sports background where I played on team sports. So I never mind not, having complete control for the sake of us doing something together,
Mhm.
and just say, hey, if it makes sense, let's do it. Like, I can curb my ego for the sake of us moving forward on a collective vision. But at the same time, I think now that you mention it, it probably makes sense why I'm always going to veer off at least a little bit and do something in my own little corner where I don't have to worry about anyone's feelings. I don't have to care about what anyone thinks. I can just go, and that's what needs to happen because I'm by myself.
Right.
It fuels that survival instinct, or that, that feeling that I have had to almost embody for so long because of what I've been through. So I think that's how I cope with it, because if I were to act that way in some of the team environments that I play in, I would blow up everything. It would be bad. But having something that I just run on my own is always helpful in that sense.
Okay, that's fair. Now to go back to just extreme execution overall, I mean, there's been some major moves, and because of you, we're talking about two, 2 million in revenue in just a thought of like, yo, let's work together. I think my question to go along with that is, what are some of the true foundation that a business needs to have to reach a revenue goal like that?
Yeah. There's so many different factors that go into it, but what I like to think I specialize in, although I can play different pockets, at least for extreme execution, because we're a small company. At the end of the day, our department is run by 3 people. We have support services that we lean on from time to time, say for legal and accounting and some other minor things. But for the most part, 2 or 3 people run our entire department. So this is not a 20-person company or a 5-person company who you have access to at all times, and you're able to utilize those resources to generate a multi-million-dollar bottom line or top line at the end of the year. You have to move a little bit differently. And that opens up the room for you to have to wear some different hats, right? So I'm not just a behind the scenes person, because I also co-lead our trainings and certifications and negotiations with clients. So it's like there's a lot of different things that you end up doing. But the way I think of it, at my core, I specialize in business development. And I think about business development as the process for how a brand brings their products and services to the marketplace while preserving their values, right? Everyone has a different definition for what they would call business development. It's a process, it's a this, it's a that. But for me, it's let's identify what your values are as a company, as a brand. What are the things that you truly care about? Because from those, you give birth and you give way to the customer experience, the customer journey. How are you going to allow people to interact with that which you bring to the marketplace? And then from there are we clear on what are our opportunities for a product and service to go to the marketplace, and then we fulfill that. Now, of course, there's a lot of other things that go with it. There's the marketing, there's the branding, there's the sale. There's so many different things. But I think business development has always been a bridge concept. I love the concept of building bridges, because bridges, or a bridge in general, it's a man-made structure that connects two things that would never meet. And so when you think about a person's values, their gifts, and the product and service with a customer and the experience that they have, business development is the thing that connects all of that together. That's how I've looked at it. So I would say for any company who's trying to reach their first 6 figures or 7 figures or whatever it is, I mean, any dollar number in general, today, I just look at it, it's difficult not to generate some level of revenue in today's marketplace. The business dynamic has become significantly easier. I mean, just think back to what I said in the beginning of this, when I said I had to communicate with people in China.
Yep.
And I had to shift my entire work schedule because there was a 12-hour time difference just to get images and communicate the design of what we want and the product and the pricing and this, and that. Where today you can do that with a couple of clicks of a button on a website like dropshipping, right?
Yeah.
Not to mention that you could even have the design created for you by AI, and like, it's bananas. It's not difficult to make money today. I think if you're struggling to make money, it is most definitely an indicator that you have some healing to do, that you have some insecurities to overcome, and you just need to do some self-work. That's the business dynamic is just too easy today to not make money as it relates to, the online space.
Okay.
But on the forefront, yeah, that's a little bit about the process and how I see it.
Okay. So kind of staying in line with that, and to turn into what we talk about on the podcast, I mean, if dealing with E, pretty much that is taking a personal brand and turning it into a business. My question to you is more on what, based off all your research, based off your experience, what are personal brands not doing in order to prepare themselves to turn themselves into a business? Like, what are some of the things they're overlooking? I would say, give them 3 things that they're not doing, and hence why they're not getting the revenue they want, the looks that they want, and to really say, yo, that's a business, or you're ending up to be an empire one day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say number 1, they're blinded by their passion, right? They're so excited and emotionally attached to brings them.
First of all, you're not going to speed past that like you didn't just say what you just said.
I gotta say the truth. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but I'm just saying, when you're so emotionally attached to what you do, it's difficult to see clearly how you can turn it into a business, because your emotions are at play. So when you're blinded by your passion, it's going to be a big challenge for you to turn it into a business. Number 2, when you're not clear on what industry you're in, right? And what is the rules, or how does your industry function from a business standpoint, right? So it's one thing to be in the space and you want to satisfy your desire to just be an entrepreneur. You're just desperately wanting to get to a space so that when somebody asks what you do, you can say, "Oh, I'm an entrepreneur." And you like the response that someone may have when you tell them that answer.
Right.
But you're missing out on, well, what industry are you in? Are you clear on how things work in that space? Like, how are billion-dollar companies operating in your industry?
Right.
When I started to understand that we were in the training and education space, and we were in the psychometric tool space, and there was $13 billion to spread, and another $50 billion spent on just leadership training alone in the US. Right? These are stats that I have come to learn and study because I started to understand that I'm not just in the space of hyping people up or helping people. there's a specific industry that you're a part of based on the product and service that you bring to the market. And you need to get clear on what is that industry, what's the market cap of that industry, and what are the rules of engagement in that space? Like, how was money made? How was money lost? What are the biggest challenges? What are the biggest opportunities? Where's the future headed in that space? When you start to get clear on that, I think that's the second one. And the third one, for most people who are just so talented that their gifts can almost override those first two things, at least for the time being. If they're still struggling from a business standpoint, they're just simply not asking for the sale, or they're not doing it the right way. So there's some people who can get themselves in a position to be clear and have all these different things, and they're attracting people to them. There's no issue, but they just can't overcome the hurdle of simply saying, this cost this much, and here's how we transact, or at least creating a seamless process enough to make that happen. So I think from a starting standpoint, that's where it is at when you start to talk scale and getting into big business. I think you have to talk systems and fulfillment, because there are studies that show that your business will break every time you 3x. So if you make $100,000 and your business grows to $300,000, whatever you were doing at $100,000 is not going to scale or function the same way at $300,000. Right. And so you have to be wise enough to say, all right, how do I rebuild my business at $300,000 to keep its authentic core still in place, but then prepare it for the new phase that we're in and hopefully where we're going. So you're always chasing growth. That's the truth. So I think a lot of people just get burnt out of that process. I mean, think about how many times you just have to rebuild or at least fix something from 100,000 to 1 million. If you use that study alone, you've at least done it 3.5 times. Some people get burned out of doing that. Like, yo, I'm tired of rebuilding yet another time.
So good. That's so good. Okay, so let's take a little quick turn, but you already kind of connected it. So you and E also connected from a fate standpoint, right? And I think my question to you is, as an active entrepreneur, like, how do you stay so strong with your faith? I mean, right now you're saying you're at the end piece of Ramadan, and not only are you, and we'll get into it, like, an active dad, but like, you still have a business to run. You have multiple things to do as an entrepreneur. How is that balance? How important it is to keep those values and beliefs in what you're doing? Because I feel that that doesn't get talked about as much in entrepreneurship, where there's faith and entrepreneurship connected, is not two separate things.
Yeah. It has to come first. You know, I think the challenges that I've learned, or the lessons that I've learned throughout my business career of going on 10 years now, is most business people will try to put business as the primary thing that they do in their life, because as an entrepreneur, you dedicate so much time, and so much time is needed or necessary for you to succeed in the space. Mm-hmm. I have to admit. But at some point, you start to see that everything falls out of whack. And that's why people have different beliefs around work-life balance. And some people call it life-work balance. They put life first. And there's a lot of different philosophies. Some people will tell you, hey, balance doesn't exist. It's just a rhythm and different seasons, and you just have to find what works for you. The thing that I find that works for me is that faith has to come first. Right. And so I remember the first adjustment that I made was in 2018 or so. I said, no business Fridays. Mm-hmm. And some people used to do the 4-day work week, because on Friday, you know, it's the summer. So it's like, oh yeah, well, you know, you don't work on Fridays because of the summer. But for me, no work Fridays was specifically because we go to the mosque on Fridays. Mm-hmm. And so I realized that if I kept myself open for any work on Fridays, or at least the first half of the day on Friday, I can run late to the mosque. I can miss the mosque altogether. Things will come up and I'll be like, oh man, I can't do it. I got to wait till next week. And then next week, like, the minute you miss something, quite honestly, you could miss it once and not realize that you missed it for an entire 6 weeks because of that one time that you missed. And so when I made that first adjustment and just said, no business Fridays, it was the first time that I showed the creator that, hey, you come first in my life, so much so that I'll put the business secondary to what has to be done on this day. And so ever since then, I used to not work at all the entire morning up until about 1:30, 2 o'clock on a Friday, and maybe just work a couple hours in the afternoon, and that was it, because I wanted to make sure nothing distracted me. When I built enough discipline, now I can do things in the morning on a Friday. But I know from 11 till about 1:30, 2 o'clock, there's nothing that could interfere with me getting to the mosque, because that is the primary thing that I have to do. When I go there, I'm getting recharged. I'm getting more clear about the importance of what I'm doing. I'm getting more educated about how to navigate and balance life, faith, and business, because they all are three different pillars that are necessary. And so that's what I realized is you have to schedule your business around your faith, not your faith around your business. The minute I did that, and again, my faith is a little bit more demanding than most, because you have to pray 5 times a day, every day, not just once a week. Like every single day you have to pray 5 times a day. You have to fast for 30 days, once a year, no exceptions. There's a certain cleansing routine that you have to go through before you pray. You know, there's so many things that you can look at as inconveniences, but it breeds that structure and that routine and the discipline necessary, that if you channel it with that, because it's really a part of who you are and what you believe, you start to see that it powers what you're doing in business, it doesn't take away from it.
So I actually have a kind of, I wouldn't say controversial question, but
Hit
want
with
your
the
take on it.
controversial. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How are you as he sips his drink? How are you feeling about how do I say this? Do you feel that in this day and age that being Muslim is somewhat trendy?
It is. I hate to say it. It is. It definitely is. There was a time, man, I'm telling you, there was nobody celebrating Ramadan. We never got days off from school for our holidays. It wasn't on the calendar. Like right now, you can open up your phone on like your Apple calendar or Google calendar, and it'll say first day of Ramadan. It's like, what?
Right.
Growing up, there was nowhere in sight. They were not celebrating nothing Muslim at all. There was no appreciation for it. Like I said, the only thing that I saw were people who were Muslim in movies being the bad guys. They were the terrorists. They were the ones that the U.S. Army was going and being super heroic. And that's just the only thing you saw. So yeah, right now it is super trendy. And I think I'm proud of it though, because it finally, like for example, I remember 3 or 4 years ago when Apple put the emojis out of the prayer hands facing upward. Like that's how Muslims pray. They don't really, put their hands together. They kind of pray with their hands like this. And then also they started to show people with the hijab, like the female with the hijab. And I was like, yo, even Apple is getting diverse. Like all of those moments were really cool to see come together, because I think that's a big reason why everyone says representation matters. You start to feel that there are examples of people who look like you that are being showcased in mainstream. So to see commercials, and I remember seeing my first Amazon commercial of a priest and a Muslim leader. They call him an imam, but they did a commercial together about like this knee brace, and Amazon powered the whole thing. And I'm thinking to myself, this is crazy. We live in a completely new era where they're showcasing this stuff on Front Street. Nike, when they did the hijab for, man, I forget the young lady's first name, but I think her last name was Muhammad. She was a U.S. Olympian fencing champion, and they made a hijab for her because there was some controversy about her, covering her hair or whatnot. So I know it's super trendy right now, but I do have to think back over the last 3 or 4 years and see all of these moments come together to put us in position for where we are now, where it is more regularly talked about and celebrated, just because people are now educated on the true essence of what it is to be of the Muslim faith. Like that I can't even be mad at it. Like, yeah, it's trendy, but honestly, I'm just happy people know the truth, or they have a better understanding. They may not be fully educated, but they have a better understanding of what our people are about. That brings me joy. So I'm gonna have to ride this wave. I know I'm not a, I try not to be a bandwagon fan, but I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna have to ride this one because it's super cool to see.
Okay, I ain't mad at that. Now, talking about balance as well. You're a new dad, okay?
Hello.
So now we have a new layer of what does a new daddy, because I'm not just going to say dad, because that just speaks as a holistic, but a new dad, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, like, talk to us about that phase that you're in right now. Feelings, still trying to get it together. Was there anything that helped prior to, like, pretty much talk to the new dads that are kind of like, how am I supposed to still do this entrepreneurship life? Like, am I still with my family? Am I out? Like, what am I doing?
Yeah. It's first off, man, I'm so grateful. It's definitely a blessing and it's a beautiful experience. I'm grateful just to be present. Honestly, I think the reason why I'm so passionate about fatherhood is because over the years and over the span of my lifetime, I just turned 33 a week or so ago, and I've come to realize the importance of a present male father figure in a child's life. Yes. And so I go into this chapter of my life now thinking about that first and foremost and saying, okay, how can I continue to show up as a healed, complete version of me to give this child a better opportunity at this thing called life than what I had? I think that's every parent's dream. And it's difficult when you can't be present or you're pulled or you personally are just not developed at a level where you can keep your sanity despite of all the craziness that comes with having a newborn or just having children in general, right? Because they don't have control of their emotions just yet. They don't know who they are. Like, there's a lot that you have to help them figure out. And so I'm just so grateful at the fact that I became a father now and not earlier, because although I love the family dynamic, I'm a family man at heart, I don't know that I would have been as ready as I am now. Now I'm just like, let's go. Like, I'm super involved because of that reason. So I think that alone is the bedrock or the foundation that makes me look at balancing all of this stuff a little bit differently. At my core, I'm a person of routine. Mm-hmm. Being a new dad, your routine doesn't mean jack. Right. It's like the baby does not care that this is the time that you wake up and go to the gym. Like, bro, I'm hungry. So you know what you're going to do? I'm going to cry till you feed me. All right. And if you got to miss the gym, guess what? I don't care. All right. So it's like, it's teaching me the importance of now being flexible, even though I much rather a set pace and routine and schedule and flow for how things ought to be. So it's still early, and I keep talking about it because, again, at the end of the day, it's only been a month. So I can't, give super, super deep insight on it. But that's the biggest thing that I've learned is, even though that's what you prefer, the ability to be flexible or to be almost the polar opposite of what you are and still do what you have to do, I think that is a big win. So tomorrow, I'm looking at the 1 month anniversary tomorrow, and I'm like, okay, fatherhood won, but Moose also gets one. Like, Moose ain't got a 0 on the first 30 days because I feel that I've still held it down. So I'm excited for it. But I think from a business standpoint now, or just entrepreneurship in general, it starts to show you that you can continue to build your businesses in a way that demand and command 18 hours of your day. Mm-hmm. By all means, you just can't be the type of father that is present with their kids 18 hours a day, right? Because there's only 24 hours in a day. So you're going to choose, do you want to balance and juggle, or do you want to start to build different? And so now I'm at a point in my business career where I'm thinking about building different. I think that's the best way to summarize it. As I'm looking into the future, I'm thinking about, okay, how can I redo what I currently have and change my approach with how I navigate the business world so that I can preserve a certain lifestyle? And it's not just about being present for children. It's you also want to preserve your health because you're not going to have the same level of health forever. And I don't want to spoil that either. So yeah, it's crazy. It's when I hear myself talk like this, I feel like I grew up on camera to some extent, and I'm watching this version of me talk, and I'm thinking about 25-year-old version of me, and just what that person would have thought about the things that I'm saying today. Like, you a sucker. Like, I would never, it's just crazy to think about, but it's true. I think life teaches you so much that when you realize there's more truth to be learned, you move a little bit differently, and you don't try to defy the odds. I'm one of 7 billion people on this planet. It's like at the end of the day, can I really defy, science and all this stuff? I can try. Is it worth it? I don't think so. So I'm just at a different point in my life now where I'm thinking about life a little bit differently, not just as it relates to fatherhood and having children, but just everything in general, business and life and people and relationships, because I care deeply about all of those things.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That was the final word. I should have just closed the joint right there. Golly. All right. So I got to treat you like everybody who gets on here. 3 books. Okay.
Ooh.
3 books that has helped mold your thought process, your way of moving, your expertise amongst branding and business. Give us 3 books.
Wow. That's crazy. So first one, I have to say, wow, there's so much. Like, I'm looking at all the books in my library right now, and it's so much. But if I had to really, really simplify it, I would say the first one is Blitzscaling by Reid Hoffman, founder or co-founder of Netflix, but phenomenal book because, as I talk about, this next chapter is about thinking differently about business. This book helped me to start understanding the importance of integrating technology and how to navigate as a tech entrepreneur, not just as a business entrepreneur. There's a difference, and it's important. So Blitzscaling was a great book. Purple Cow, when you talk, I would categorize that as the branding book or marketing book, but Seth Godin, phenomenal book just about literally thinking different. Maybe I shouldn't be giving these summaries so I don't spoil them for the readers, but just in case you're interested about why I chose them or what I learned from them, I would definitely say that, man, thinking different about the business where you think about, who helped me to realize this even more, man, I got to give him credit. Daryl came onto the podcast when he talked about YouTube, and he said, everyone is focused on the best practices, but what's the issue with the best practices? Everyone's trying to do them. And so if you want to be authentic, yes, you want to pay attention to the best practices, but you also have to add your spin to it. And when I think about what he said, and I think about this book, it just reinforced that idea so much. And I was like, yo, that's real. Like this is important. And then last but not least, I think if there was a book that really hit home. Simon Sinek's Start With Why. I think that was a really good book too.
Okay.
Because it covers both business, branding, and people. Like you actually, there's like the 3 main sectors. If we had to think about business as one universal thing, I would say it's actually all 3, branding, business, and people. So Simon Sinek's Start With Why is another phenomenal book.
Facts. Listen, I want to say thank you for trusting me to ask the questions, 2, opening up on this platform, and 3, being very authentic with your answers. Like, I didn't see too much processing. And for those people who are going to watch the video, you'll see what I'm talking about. Like, he's definitely you can't ask him a spontaneous question. Isaiah, if you can put in the videos, please catch one time where he was thinking and he got caught off guard. Like, damn, I wasn't even expecting that question. Like, please find that for us. But yeah, you didn't really process. You just really went with what was on your mind and what was on your heart. And so thank you for doing that. Of course, you got to end it with, wait, before you end it, hold on. Definitely go and listen to the after show because I'm gonna ask a few more questions. Okay, this is good. So this is few more. This is way more relaxed. Okay, but it's gonna be a little bit deeper, more questions. So go check the after show out. Of course, Creator Ave every Friday. Go check that out and follow us at Nicky and Moose everywhere. But Moose, for your final words, your favorite quote of all times.
Oh my goodness, there's so many. Gosh, it's like some of the. I think that what makes this question hard. It's the same thing with the books. I'm a nerd in that category, so there's so much. But the one that still sticks out is Nipsey's "Too much of anything is a liability." I think I as an extremist, you learn that that's going to eventually ruin what you're trying to build. So too much of anything is a liability.